Use as a marker for the hands-on session, and my business card, which will be used as a frame marker. If we run out of it, please let me know. I've got more over here.
Vale. Bé, aquesta segona part del workshop.
Second part of the workshop, we will develop a tiny app so that we can apply AR knowledges thanks to Vuforia technology. So we will develop a small app, we will create a marker for it, we will create a 3D object, we will include an interaction layer, and we will do all of this with the two types of markers supported by Vuforia. It takes a little time to access Vuforia, so you have to register on Vuforia website and download all the files that we will be needing for the practice.
Ara ho ficaré en gran.
Show it on the screen.
Vaya, me he pasado. Es veu?
It's fine at the back. It's bit.ly/L capital letter ZAI capital letter DR. This is a link that takes you to Dropbox, and you will find a file there, which is the one we will be using during the workshop.
Si entreu a developer.
If you go on developer.vuforia.com,
per tindre l'accés a XSS, UPC, podeu connectar i en principi us ha d'aparèixer una altra finestra.
to access the Wi-Fi network XSF UPC. And
La pàgina d'inici era UPC? Surt automàtic? Es mantenia el navegador obert. Clic aquí. Ah, vale. No m'ho marca. ¿A buscar o on? Sí, sí. Está conectando. Intenteu entrar i si algú li surt la finestra de la UPC que em digui l'adreça.
please try and go on, and because I'm not being able to access the Wi-Fi portal.
Portal XSF. Sí, vale. Ho esteu veient tots com estic accedint a la xarxa perquè us farà falta?
Is everyone connected to the Wi-Fi network? Okay.
El convidat, i en principi... Vale. Bé, doncs, accediu a developer.vuforia.com.
You go on Vuforia website, developer.vuforia.com. Should you have any doubt, please raise your hand, but don't talk to each other. Otherwise, this is a little chaos here. Okay, so you click on register, and here you have to fill out this questionnaire. You include your own data, and you will get an email. You go on your email account, you click on the email, and then you will be allowed to go on the platform. I show you again the link to download the files from the Dropbox, and please keep doing both processes, and I will go on explaining this session. As I said before, what we will do now is to create a project on Unity as a 3D engine by using Vuforia as an AR engine. Unity, I don't know if all of you are knowledgeable about Unity. You had a crash course on Unity yesterday for Mega Masters of Unity. Well, I will just touch upon a couple of concepts regarding Unity, just for you to know, and we will go straight to the point. Unity is an engine that is usually used to develop video games. What's nice about it is that by just doing one development, you can compile for different platforms, be it standalone project or executable on Mac or PC, for Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, or mobile devices, mobile technology with Android and iOS. Obviously, previously paying the necessary licenses. I understand that you've got the 30-day version because it is absolutely executable and you will be able to compile. Otherwise, you will have to pay for the license. Yeah, there is a free version, but not all the features are for free, depending on your license. If you want, for example, Unity Pro to use specific features of Unity, you will have to pay for the license. Well, you can research on the net and see which is the the necessary features for your project. With Vuforia, you don't have to do that. Sorry, we didn't hear the remark. If you want to compile it with iOS, if I'm not mistaken, you have to pay for the iOS license. I knew that it was for free in the case of Android. I have the Unity Pro license, for example, so I have no constraint. And the Unity Pro license has all these particles, issues, kinematics to create skeletons, and you've got two different sprite features. But well, with your version, you should be able to do that. So, if you go on Unity, I think that everyone has it installed on the university's computer or your own device, and you will see a series of windows here. You've got up here on the left, this is the scene. See, I'm moving the mouse around. Then we've got the visualization of the game, the what you see is what you get view, This is what we will get on our mobile device, etc. Then we've got the hierarchy here in the middle. Here we see all the elements included in the scene with the class hierarchy, parents and children. Then we've got the project examiner or inspector. Here we've got the examiner with all the files making up the project with a folder structure, and when we click on each folder to the right we see the content of each folder with different types of files. And then we've got the inspector on the right. When we click on an object of the scene that we want to operate, on the inspector we see the properties of the object. Broadly speaking, we don't need anything else. That's about it. We've got then a timeline where you can create animations, debug windows in order to debug the project. We've got a code editor called Mono, which is open source, and that's the one they use to be able to edit the code. The code you can edit on Unity. Well, you can use 3 different types of code: JavaScript, C#, or their own language, which is Boo, B-O-O. I always recommend you to use C# because it has a class hierarchy, it works quite well, and if you have programmed before, you won't have any trouble understanding it. If this is your first attempt, well, you can use JavaScript. It's not so stringent in a way, it allows you to do more crazy stuff. There is a help or support service, and that's about it. Has everybody downloaded the file from this BIT address, from the Dropbox? Everyone has the file? Yes? If you say yes, I would appreciate it. Okay. I will show you the outcome of this first exercise. In this first exercise, we've got a marker. I will tell you in a minute how to place it, which is this orange thing that we see here. It's a cube, a simple cube that is mapped. And if you've got your own laptop and the setup is fine, everything is well installed, and the stars are aligned, when you click on play, in this, what you see is what you get view. I see myself, as you see on screen, and if I place the card in front of it, I am doing this real-time tracking, and I am showing a 3D object. Can you see it from the back? Nobody answers, so I presume they do. This is what we will get. This is a very simple exercise, but it's just for you to get a clear idea of how an AR scene is structured. Okay, to begin with, new project, okay? We go to a folder, we rename it, for example, exercise AR. So we create a folder on the desktop, we select it, and we click on create. So we've got this empty scene, this new project. Is everyone on this page? Are we all on the same page? So you go to File, New Project. You have to be on the Create New Project tab. You click on Browse, and here on your computer or the university's computer, with the right button, you create a new folder. So right button click, create new folder. Apologies, because I'm used to the Mac. So with Windows, you have to first create the folder on the desktop and then select it. So we create it from here with the right button. You create the folder, you rename it, you select it. Yeah? Is everyone following? But you do not select any file, any bundle. No. Empty. You just leave it empty. Okay? Has everyone made it so far? The first thing we can do, just for you to understand how to create objects on Unity, is creating a cube. We go to Game Object. You click on the tab, Create Other, and you click on Cube. And this has created a cube on our scene. With these arrows, you can move it around, up and down, left and right. And with the keys of the keyboard, W is to move, E means rotate, and R is scaling. You can try them out, and you will see how the gizmo surrounding the object will change. So if I press R, I can scale the object, or move it around by pressing W, or rotate it by pressing E. The Unity structure is made up by scenes. You create one scene, and from that scene you move on to a different scene. So you don't have just one single screen including it all. Basically because resources are limited, and when you are visualizing an object, a game, etc., you just load the necessary elements. So Unity structures every game, every project by scenes. So we create the scene. When you create a new project, you already have a scene, and now we have to save it. So we go to File, Save Scene As, and we have to name it here. So we can call it Scene, for example. And in the folder structure within Assets, the Assets folder, we've got this scene file, and if I clicked on this file, I would basically crush the scene, but you can include additional elements in the scene. For example, we have one cube, right? But you can add a light. You go to Game Object, Create, and then Directional Light. And if you look at the scene, now the cube is lit. It lit. By default, all scenes have a camera. This is the main camera, the object that we had at the beginning. This camera is offering us a perspective on the game. So if I move the camera up or down, do you see the cube, how it moves on the bottom view? It's not the cube that is moving, but rather the camera. We are changing the perspective by moving the camera.
Ah, vale. Vosaltres deu... Sí, sí. Sí, mira, si vas a la dreta aquí a layout, veieu? Cliques aquí.
Layout, you click here on the right, and I think it's 2 by 3, and this is the view I have. You can choose the layout. Okay, as I was saying, we've got this camera here, and the camera is showing the scene. And that's what we will see on the game in our experience or in our AR project. So, is everything clear? Scene, okay? To move around. This is the view, the what you see is what you get view. To visualize the final outcome. This is the hierarchy of objects to see at a structure level, at a game level, which are the game objects making up the scene. And this column here is the folder structure of the project. And on the far right, we've got the properties of the selected game object. For example, right now, the main camera is selected, and the properties of such camera are all these things here listed on the right. So if I selected a cube, this would be the cube's properties. Okay? The third element, you mean? You've got 3 game objects. I can't read it from here. Oh, the third one is the directional light. Yeah. Because we went to game object, create other, directional light.
Vale? Llavors,
We could keep on including content or models. We will include a model in a minute. But what's nice about Unity is that it works in a modular way. So you add plugins, and this offers you more functionalities than the software itself. And Vuforia has created a plugin to offer this AR functionality to Unity. So if you downloaded the file from the BIT link, you unzip it, and this is what you should have once you unzip the file, all these files here. One is named imperialsoldier.fbx. This is a file created by Maya, Blender. It's a 3D object, and this is the format they get, the FBX. And this is the format that is supported by Unity in order to include 3D content. Then we have the marker, which is the image that you've got, this hat image that we handed out. This is the one we will play around with in a minute. And then you've got two .package files. These .package files are files of the plugin for Unity. When you have to add a functionality to Unity, it usually comes in this format. It's a zip file, but it is called .package. So in order to import this new functionality to Unity, well, it is very easy. You get this, the one with the long name, Vuforia Unity Android .package. You take this one, you drag it directly on the project window, you drop it there, and the Unity recognizes it as a .package file, and it asks us which files of this .package file we want to import. And here we could select all the files that we want to import. In this case, since we only need the plugin for AR, we say everything, and we import everything in the .package file. Okay, so far so good?
si cliqueu aquí baix, el que fa és
If you click here at the bottom, you can get a different view of this window with tiny icons, but I prefer to have it as I have it now, with this layout. This .package file generates a whole structure which is usually the same for all Unity projects. Which is the structure? Well, there is always an assets folder. This is the basic folder. If you don't have an assets folder, you cannot generate a project on Unity. Within assets, there is usually a folder called editor. And in that folder, we've got the editor content. That is extra content, additional content, properties, scripts that we will only use as at an editor level. Then we've got another folder called plugins. And in that folder, you will find the libraries which will be used to generate this new content. In this case, are the libraries that the DLLs for the camera, to generate content, to generate the coordinates axis, to include the 3D, but it's not the 3D engine itself, because the 3D engine is offered by Unity. In this case, once we have imported this plugin, it just spots specific markers and it allocates specific coordinates to that marker, and it allows you to move the camera. What else do we have in this assets folder? Well, usually it creates, or we create a standalone folder with the plugin name, and we include there all the content that we will use to create the scene with augmented reality. In this case, we call it Qualcomm Augmented. So in this folder, what do we have? We have a structure with all the textures that we use, the scripts used by the plugin at a Unity level, materials, etc. And then we've got stream and assets.
Per efecte, quan tu compiles un projecte de Unity, es crea, digue-li, un fitxer, depenent del tipus de plataforma que fa servir.
Create a file. Well, when you create a project, there is a series of files that are generated. You cannot really access these files once you execute your project. Where you've got an Exchange folder to include an additional texture or any other feature is this folder here, Streaming Assets. This is a folder for dynamic content. This is used to connect, to go on a website, download a texture or 3D content, etc., broadly speaking. So, do you have this structure clear in mind? This is just for you to have an idea. You don't really have to know it by heart.
With the two ways, you can import FBX with animation and without animation. In the example, now we create an example with one switch, okay, without animation. And in another example, there are a Star Wars model, okay, Imperial Soldier, that dance Michael Jackson, okay, and you can see after, okay. Sorry about my English, it's very pésimo, pero vale. Vale. Llavors,
okay, this is clear. These 3 windows. Let's go straight to the point of Vuforia. What does Vuforia offer us to go about augmented reality? We have 2 types of markers with Vuforia. Are there any of these left? Because I don't have any. Hello, at the back. Are there any of these copies left? Yes, I need one. I didn't keep one for myself.
Tenim dos tipus de marcadors.
Two types of markers. What they call the frame marker and the image marker. The frame markers are this type of markers with this type of pattern on the edge with tiny white and black checkers. It has this checkered rim. So with this black and white combination, you can go up to 512 combinations. And this is already included in the plugin, in the software. So you don't have to train the app if you want to recognize this type of markers. As we will do in a minute, we will create the marker and we will tell it which is the pattern that it needs to recognize. Number 1, number 2, number 512. How do we go about this? It's very easy. Unity uses an object structure in which you can create the game object. You create a cube, you add a script to the cube, to the script you add a light, to the light you add a particle. So all these properties on the inspector on the right, here for example we've got the cube selected. It has a movement system, scale, position and rotation, collisions. Whenever another object comes close, my object does not move. Then you've got the renderer so that you can paint and picture the object on the scene. All these properties are grouped here on the inspector and they all make up a prefab. A prefab is an object with all these properties added to it, and you just have to drag it and drop it on the scene. You don't have to create an empty object and then add to it different properties. So it's a shortcut. If you go to prefabs here we've got a blue icon, and this means that this object is a prefab, and here we've got different prefabs to choose from. In this case we will use the frame marker. We click on frame marker and we drag it directly and drop it on the scene.
Tenim un mouse de rodeta
Have one of these mouses where you have a wheel, a scroll. If you scroll back, you will be zooming out to see the general scene. If you double-click the object, you will have an automatic zoom there too. And in that way you will be able to center the scene. If you want to change the scene, press Alt, and with the right button you will change the icon. And if you move up and down, you can also change the view of the scene. Can you see that? These are the three things you need to know when you start doing this, because otherwise it's hell. This where WER, moving, rotating and scaling, and then the wheel to zoom in and zoom out. What have we done here? We've created now, we've placed a frame marker on this scene. If it's selected to the right, you will see all the properties of this prefab, which has become an object in this scene. This object has got a transformation possibility, position, rotation and scale, plus some scripts to define a number of behaviors. When it turns on, it should connect to the plugin, identify the IDs and so on. And one of the properties of this scripts is the marker behavior. Where you have marker ID, we can tell the system what number we would like to have identified. This combination of the card is 0. This is the default one. If instead of starting black, white, black, well, if it were a different combination, it would be number 1 or number 2 or number 3. So you would have to indicate the same number that you would have in the printed marker. In this case, it's 0, because the example you have, the card you have as an example, is 0. What else? I always like placing the object in position 0, 0. So let's go to the positioning, transformation chapter, positioning, and here we place 0, 0, 0. Now the object is centered, aligned on the Z plane. And it has a given size. What else do we need to add? We need to add here the augmented reality camera. I said that by default the system creates one camera, but this is not the camera that Vuforia will use to understand what it's seeing with all the scripts and so on and so forth. So let's now go to main camera, right button, delete. Okay? As we don't have any cameras here on the scene, we're not painting anything, because I always need a camera in order to show the content of the game or of the augmented reality. So we need to add a camera here, an augmented reality camera. How do we do that? Let's go to Qualcomm prefabs. We have an AR camera. Let's drag it to the scene. The game tag is black. We have a camera, but we have got a camera that will show us the scene a little bit, and now we can move it. This is the most complex part. I usually click view from top. I click I zoom back. I move the object more or less now that it's centered. You place it parallel, or with Alt and the I you move the scene, and then you rotate it a little bit so that you can have a bit of perspective, and then you go back, more or less. Let me tell you, this is the most complex bit of all. Moving around the environment, placing the camera where you would like to have it, having a more or less square perspective. So far so good? Have you all come this far? No? I knew this was coming.
Sí, també. Si fiqueu aquí les propietats, correcte.
The properties here, let's make it easier. Here, it's 16.7. Sorry, minus 16.7, 232.4, and minus 134.2 with a rotation of 34.4. Well, you can copy it. You have the figures on the screen.
Sí, menys 16,7 a la X.
Minus 16.7 for X, 232.4 for Y, 193.8 for the Z, and rotation of X is 44 degrees, and it should have more or less this view. However, in fact, the camera, where is the camera oriented?
Ara voy. Sí.
Discuss that in a minute.
Okay.
Are you all there?
Sí, bueno, més o menys. I rotació 44. Ja està.
També ho podries fer amb l'Align with View.
No.
No funcionava.
Digues.
the compiler it can find the orientation is not suitable for Vuforia.
Wow. Sí. Whoa, aquí.
Something misplaced?
Yes.
Okay.
Too many things.
Maybe we can unzip it again. The folder.
You have to unzip
unzip
before, yes, because this is the zip, not just the. Wait for the workshop. Extra here. Okay. And now.
Same one. Same marker.
Okay.
See, the V was missing.
This. Molt bé. Estem tots aquí? Sí?
All there? Yeah.
Llavors, aquesta...
This view,
S'amaga. Digues. No et sento, perdona. ¿No te aparece la superficie del marker?
O le tengo que crear un plano o algo. Claro.
¿Habéis descomprimido el zip?
Sí, lo tengo aquí. Pero si arrastro este... Claro, con este.
No, esto no. No, es que te está dando error.
Gracias, ¿eh? ¿Puede ser la versión de Unity que estoy usando?
Te has descargado la última.
No, no es rotativa.
¿Dónde lo tiene? Bueno.
Ah, bueno, es que antes se lo he puesto a un cubo, pero... No le he puesto la...
Digo, sin. Apps.
Debería verse.
No, esto. Te has cargado algo que no tenías que tocar. New project. Bueno, te lo pongo aquí, ¿vale? Mientras. Sí. ¿Dónde tienes el fichero? ¿Este es?
Sí.
Hostia, cosa más rara. ¿No te está dando error aquí? Pues igual sí que puede ser que es por la versión de Unity. Hostia, ni idea. Síguelo, sin caso, pues ponte con él y lo sigues.
Vale.
¿Vale? Me sabe mal, porque
No, pasa.
es que no...
Bueno, gracias.
Bé, seguim.
Let's move on. Now that we have this view, you need to be aware of the fact that this view is the viewing view during the game. It's not the one that will be used, because once you place the card and you look at it from and you aim the phone there, your smartphone, this is the camera that will move around within the experience. But if I want to see the contents of the game, I need a camera to know what it is painting. Somebody asked me and said, do we need to place it in this specific position and so on? Of course not. This is simply for you to have a view in the game and see the content that we're going to paint on top of it.
Vale. Tenim l'objecte. Tenim el marcador.
Object, we have the marker, we have the camera. Now let's add a 3D. Let's add the cube as we included it before.
Si teniu el cub encara,
You have the cube. Do you still have the cube?
fiquem 0, 0, 0, 0,
Right, 0, 0, 0. And the cube is not seen here. Why? Because the scale is very tiny. I remove R, and let's make it bigger. Bigger. So if you can give it values, more or less 44%. 44, 44, 44.
cliquem a la W per moure'l i l'acabem d'ajustar a sobre del marker. Ens assegurem més o menys. Vale, perfecte. Farem un pel més petit.
Smaller. This is more or less. While the object is there, and it's on top of the marker, we're talking about the cube that should be on top of the marker. We've made it bigger with the R. A little bit further to the right or to the left, it doesn't matter. The size, as I said, is 44 everywhere. We also have the light. If we didn't have light, everything would be dark, and when we would show it on the smartphone, it would be very dark too. So it's important to have a light in the scene.
Vale. Si nosaltres ara
Now we do play.
val, veiem l'objecte allà al mig,
The object there in the middle. We also see the camera, which is showing it. And look, when you show a card, then the object sticks on the card and we can track it. If I go out, it stays. If I go back, it sticks to the card. Yes? No?
¿Quién me está hablando? Que levante el brazo.
Raise your hand if you're talking to me.
¿Sí?
Connectar una càmera es pot
En principi, si la càmera és teva i tal, ja te la pilla. O sigui,
connectar. Igual té alguna manera de configurar perquè segueixi...
no, dona-li al play. Ja, si està ben configurada i té els drivers, ja et sortirà. Si no està ben configurada i tal, doncs et sortirà això.
perquè no veu el frame. No?
Vale. És important...
It's important with this type of markers, it's important, first of all, to show the white area. If you put your fingers like this, if you hold it like this, it will not detect it. It also needs this white area, which is like a boundary, and it needs the whole card to be within the image. If the image is there and you approach it to this with only one part of the card, we are not going to make it. So we need to hold it like this. You place it at a reasonable distance. It will also depend on the computer, of course. It will be faster or slower if you wait for a second and wait for it to catch it, and then you can try.
Hòstia, et surt del revés. Si a algú li surt del revés i tal, vale?
The other way around. Wait a second. This is usually due to the computer software, to the software of your computer. This is using a generical driver to access the webcam, and if the driver to access webcam is a little bit old, or I don't know, 1,000 things could happen, then this could be the result. No big deal. But it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird anyway. This happened to me while I was testing Android devices. The Chinese Android tablets, those that cost $70, for whatever reason, they turn the image around, not up, top down, but from left to right. For one of them it was left to right. It was because of the way they render the image. I'm sure that if we adjust the texture, you would be able to fix it for this specific computer. If it's a reasonable computer, these things should not happen. I can see it's an Asus, don't worry. This is a bit weird, that's why.
Pensava que hi havia una pestanya. Flip horizontally, a veure si és això. No. Doncs traiem aquí el flip horizontally. Sí, això ja ho hem fet perquè... Sí, bueno, ara ho explico. Ai, perdó. Si us fixeu i investiguem una mica l'escena, vale? parem un moment el vídeo. Cliquem a sobre de la AR càmera, val? I mirem les propietats que té. Si tirem cap a baix, cap a baix, cap a baix, a l'apartat del webcam behavior, sí? Estem tots aquí? Cliquem a AR càmera i a l'inspector, a la dreta de tot, tirem cap a baix, vale? I una de les propietats és webcam behavior. Aquí, si tinguéssiu més d'una càmera, podríeu arribar a seleccionar, vale, la càmera que voleu fer per fer el prèvio a l'escriptori. Al final això és un prèvio, per no tindre que generar el joc o la red augmentada, crear el projecte, compilar-lo, passar-lo al telèfon i llavors provar. Clar, aquest flux de treball, que és com es feia fins no fa molt, és molt farragós, molt farragós. Que, ostres, el cubo ahora no lo quiero aquí, ahora lo quiero un centímetro más a la derecha. Claro, lo muevo, compilo, paso el proyecto, lo cargo al teléfono, lo instalo, lo pruebo, hòstia, què m'he passat? Un pin a la derecha. Clar, és molt farragós. Llavors, el que va fer Vuforia des de fa poc és incorporar el prèvio amb la webcam. De tal manera que tu pots provar directament sobre l'escriptori amb una webcam doncs, la realitat augmentada. Vale? Òbviament no tindràs l'experiència del touch, no la tindràs. Però bueno, tot el fet de provar amb un marcador i que realment funcioni i tal i qual, t'estalvia molta feina. El que us deia del webcam behavior. Aquí pots seleccionar, si tens més d'una càmera ficada, quina càmera vols ficar, vale? I després per aquest tipus de glitchos, com amb ella li passava o amb ell, que se'ls canvia la imatge, han arribat al flip horizontally, que és de la imatge la posa així, girar-la així. Vale?
Horizontally. You would not have flip vertically because this is for the type of thing. So you're doing a preview, and if they realize that the image in some computers, because of the hardware that they use, is upside down, then in some of the reviews that they will do, they will have the checkbox where you can flip the image. It's just for you to take it into account. Sometimes this is due to software problems. The example we have here, what we've said is we have these 4 different elements. The camera as it is, when you turn the game on internally in the hierarchy, you will have an object called background camera and texture buffer camera that we have not created. And these are the internal objects of Vuforia to generate the camera and so on and so forth. I don't know, there's something wrong here.
Ja us dic, això també passa de que a vegades doncs, llavors, fixeu-vos que jo el que no vull és que ja m'aparegui...
In this case, sometimes I don't want the 3D object to appear there. I want the 3D object to appear only when I place the marker. Okay? So if I remove it very quickly, the object will stay there. I stop the player, and what should I do now? Both in Vuforia and Unity, the hierarchical structure of how you nest the elements or how you chain them is very important. Of the 3D content, the cube will be referred to the marker. Will act in reference to the marker. So it's just as simple as taking the cube, dragging it, and put it on top of the frame marker. So the hierarchical structure is frame marker, and its child, is the cube. Test it now, please. The object doesn't appear anymore because it's not identifying the marker. But as soon as I place the marker there, it will appear. Okay? Okay. We've created a small scene on a marker. The package is very important with all the content generated, but now we still need to place the content and the hierarchical structure in order to be able to touch this project. I recommend, this is my own personal preference, but you can also click Assets, and in here you can create your own folder for this project. In this case we will call it Workshop. And within Workshop you create the structure with all the elements you're going to use. What will we usually have? We'll usually have scenes. Therefore, we will have a folder called Scenes. Materials. We'll have to create materials or add textures. Now we can create a folder called Materials. And for that, you need to press the right button. Right button, Create Folder. And Scripts. One part will be something you will have to edit through code. You will have to edit the content and you will have to give it a specific functionality. Script. I like to organize it this way, but this is something that everyone needs to do in different ways. You could, for instance, save everything within Assets. But if the project gets big, be aware that maybe this is going to be a mess. These are all folders. Yes, they're all folders. So what we would do now is, first of all,
guardaríem l'escena aquesta que estem treballant.
We'd save the screen we are working on within scenes. How do we go about this? Go to File, Save Scene As, and here you will see the structure that we have created. Workshop, Scenes, and here we will name it as Frame Marker, or FM. So, if we now go to the Scenes folder, and inside Workshop we've got this FM file, which is the scene that we have saved. Now we will add a small additional material. Oh, I didn't copy the material? Well, anyway. We will add a material to the cube. How do we do it? If you go to your desktop, well, wherever you downloaded the file and unzip it, you should have this interruptor folder, interrupter. And in that folder,
farem servir un fitxer de scripts, ¿vale?
You've got a model and some images. And one of these is called Flores, F-L-O-R-E-S. You click on the materials folder first, and then you drag the Flores to materials. And thus we have imported this file to our project. And if we click on the file, we see all the properties of this file on the inspector on the right. So, if I now want to add this image as a material to an object, either we could create material, add material to object, and then change the material with this Flores image, this flowery pattern, or rather we drag it directly and drop it on top of the cube. And as you can see, inside the materials folder, well, I got it wrong because now I have two materials folders. But inside we've got this material called Flores, which is flowers in Spanish. So here we've got the map, the image, and then the material. The material has this spot, this round spot. Yes? No? Everyone? Following? So if you now click on play again, let's see if this works.
Això és el Windows aquest que no...
Of the Windows, because mine is a Mac and it doesn't like FaceTime.
Vale? I ja veiem el cub.
Here we see the cube with the applied material and in augmented reality. Yes? Questions?
Transparent, et refereixes? Sí. Sí, sí. Sí, sí, pots ficar-lo. El que, perquè t'agafi la transparència, ¿vale? Llavors entramos en el maravilloso mundo.
Well, we now enter the wonderful world of shades and materials, because a material, at the end of the day, is a behavior, a visual behavior of an object. So there's something called shaders, and if you click on the material, okay, let's see here. You've got all these shaders. This is a whole list of shaders, and the shaders add additional and special properties to the material. For example, if the image I'm adding to the material is transparent, let's use the transparent shader or the diffuser so that it diffuses the material. If you want the material to be reflecting, well, there are many, many options in terms of shaders. If a material is black and white, you can use it as a mask to do this and that. These are visual behaviors of materials, and that's what Unity calls shaders. But this is, of course, much more sophisticated, and you can do millions of things with these properties. Is this only with the Unity Pro version? No, you get some of these shaders in the free version too. But many materials can be found on the net, and you import them on your Unity, and that's about it. I don't really know if they limit the use of specific shaders at a level of software. I don't know.
Com relaciones el cub amb el marcador? Vale, sí.
Relate the cube with the marker. So once you have dragged the frame marker and included it as a child, internally, when there is only one frame marker, the program takes all the content and paints it, renders it. So the object has all the properties with all the mesh, and well, it just relates when you've got just one object. Sorry, but we can't hear the questions from the audience.
No, correcte. Sí, sí. Si jo ara, per exemple...
If I include two markers, yes, exactly what you say. So at the end, what you get is the markers, and everything below the markers is content associated with that marker. And if you've got a standalone child, it will be in the middle of everything, and when you include it, it will be associated to one marker. So that's why I said it's so important to have this hierarchy well done. So frame marker, and then all the class structure and all the content inside. It's very important to get the structure right.
Espera. ¿Que realmente depende? No. El tema de la cámara, fijaros que os he comentado antes. Tú realmente...
The camera, as I said before, here what you get is what you see is what you get view. It's just for you to test the game. So You could put it and aim it at one even if you had 5 markers, and then you have the marker yourself. Let's say that this is marker number 1 and this is marker number 2. So you would aim at one and then another. No, I'm referring to the scene. On the scene.
No, no pasaría nada. No pasaría nada. Siempre, siempre. O sea, la cámara, esta que estás visualizando aquí, es simplemente...
Camera here, it's just a viewer. It's just for you to get an idea of the final outcome. In the case of augmented reality, it's only a viewer, because the camera is a real camera whenever you will use it. So you will move it around. And here this is just at a visual level for you to see what you're doing, otherwise you would be a little bit lost.
Sí, ahora hacemos. Yo lo he probado a nivel móvil.
I have really tried it on my mobile device, and they say that it works up to 8 at the same time. Well, it will really depend on your computer, if it runs on nuclear energy, nuclear power, because having 8 markers with real-time tracking, well, it's too much really. I have tested it with 4 at the same time, and it worked okay. With it, each marker was fine, with the right perspective. It worked quite well with an iPad 3, I think it was. With another marker, yeah, you can have additional content. Having the same marker with different contents... Sorry, we can't hear the remarks being made by the gentleman.
O sea, tendrías que tener una matriz de estas así.
You should have this type of matrix, which would be number 0, and then another one which would be number 1, and it would detect both. For example, here, I will hide the cube for a minute, and I will have this view. Here we've got black, white, white, black, but if I now add an additional prefab, another frame marker, I will move it a little bit. The program is so intelligent that it has even changed the ID. But here on the inspector, you've got number 1, and here you've got number 0. Do you see how the ID changes? Even if the image doesn't change, the image is only a visual reference, but internally, if I now click on play, I will only take one because there is only one. I'm sorry, it's not really working. But in principle, you should have each content associated with one frame marker. No, you can't have 2 of the same. Why do you want to have 2 of the same? For example, if they are trees, if you want to have many trees on one scene. No, what you do then is you've got cube 1, and in cube 1 you include all the tree structure. You don't need many frame markers. What if you want to move the forest around all the trees? This is advanced Unity 3D. In principle, you would not be able to do that. Not long ago, there was this guy who had created a script. Because the problem is that you have a marker and you've got an object and it moves along. So at a moment in time, you have another marker, a different one, and what you want to do is to have continuity of the object that was moving towards that marker, or either that object begins and finishes in the same place. Is that what you mean? Is this continuity you're looking for? No, we're not understanding each other.
De entrada no. A ver, hi havia un clic aquí. A ver, un segon. No, aquí no era. Aquí sí, pero esto no es. De entrada no es pot fer. Amb el mateix marcador.
In principle, you cannot do it, not with the same marker, at least. No, in principle, you cannot do it. With different markers, you could do it.
Després ho veurem aquí a la R càmera, si us fixeu una...
We'll see it later. With the camera, one of the properties is simultaneous target or something of the kind. So you can tell the camera how many markers you wanted to recognize at the same time, but they are different markers. If I've got 2 or 3 markers, if I only want one marker to be recognized, it's the first one it detects really, but that's not what you were pointing at. So here we come to the frustrating moment, and that is we have to compile. Compilation time is quite frustrating. At the beginning I said that you should learn to work with Unity, move around the scene, placing objects, and the second part of the work is compilation. I will show you an example of Android compilation. You should have the JDK installed, and you can filter it with Eclipse or Android development tools. I will do it myself for you to see how we go about it, and well, fingers crossed. Let's see if it works. Okay, we save the scene. To compile a project, once we've got the marker, the content, etc., what do? We go to File, Build Settings, and we get this window here that pops up. On this window means that we have to tell the program which are the scenes that we want to compile. So you go to Add Current, and if you had the scene open, it adds it up, or you go to the Scenes folder and you drag and drop the scene that you want to choose. In this case, we only have one scene. Please just include one scene. Second step, we have to tell the program the platform we want to deploy the scene to. Vuforia, as I said before, only works with Android and iOS. With Android, you could go about the whole process for free, unless you want to upload the app to Google Play, and you have to pay $25, but it's for life. And if you deploy to iOS, I think that it was $99 per year, plus having the Xcode, plus having a Mac, etc. So by default, PC, Mac and Linux are selected. We click twice, well, we click once on Android, and we click on Switch Platform, so that we select Android. I recommend you to do this at the beginning. Nothing happens in this case because we just have one cube with a not very sophisticated marker, and there is no content in the project. But when you switch platform, the Unity reloads all the contents, 3D content, textures, materials, compiled by the destination platform. So if the project is very big and with a lot of content, when you switch platform, this takes ages. With big projects, it can take ages. Why? Well, because this generates a compiled file with a whole byte structure inside. So it's different to execute it on your desktop or with an Android device with a quantum processor, etc. Because the textures internally are compiled in a different manner. So it's really about a byte structure. By compiling in one way or the other, you just get a different outcome. So I recommend you to do it at the beginning, because then every time you import textures, load objects, etc., it switches platform and compiles straight away. So it's better to do it at the beginning, especially for big projects. So then we click on Player Settings. And here we could specify the properties of the app launching. For example, we could include an icon, the name of the product, which will, in this case, will be Exercise AR. Resolution matters. For example, if you want the app to be seen on portrait or landscape, you can choose the layout. Portrait or landscape, rather. The icon, the splash image, which is the first image you see when you launch an app. Usually the splash image is the logo or some commercial image.
Aquí, a la part d'identificació,
in this identification site, we can even tell it which is the minimum API supported by the software. So if the final device doesn't have the specific API for Android or iOS, we can tell it not to run it, not to publish it. Where can we find this? In other settings. Minimum API level.
¿vale? Aquí tenim el filtre de l'ARP, ¿vale?
Here we've got this filter because the mobile structure is used depending on the chip. We used to have ARP6 or 7 and now they only support AR7. This is the chip generation really that is supported by the device. This is a handicap because I've said before that in order to execute these games or experiences you need quite a good mobile device. So far they only supported the 6th and 7th generation. Because otherwise it wouldn't execute properly. But since they are adding up more features, well, before these cheap generations were supported, but once you downloaded the app, it would take you a couple of minutes to download it, and when you wanted to execute it, the user experience was very poor. So this is a strategic decision they have made, and they now only support the 7th generation of these chips. And here we've got publishing settings. As it were, these are the codes, the password, the keys with which we could code the game, encrypt it. how can I explain this? Let me think about it. In order to upload an app to Google Play, the app needs to be signed. And in order to sign the app, as if it were to say that you are the author, that you are the owner of the code, so you do it through private and public keys, and that's how you sign your app. Do you know about these public and private key certificates? So that's how we sign it. I have tested it, and well, if you really want to upload the app to Google Play, you have to sign it. So by default, we will sign it. We click on Create New. Play Store password and confirm password. Well, the password is workshop in my case. And once this is done, you click on Browse Key Store. So here you will be able to save this small file with your keys. You save it, and here you have generated the keys with which you will sign your code. This is not very well done on Unity because it's quite, it's not in an orderly fashion. You have to include the password first and then click on Key Store and generate it. Well, once this is done, we go back to the Build Settings window, and in this case you click on Development Build. If you don't do that, on some devices, maybe when you load the app, the camera does not go on. If you click on Development Build, you are asking for permission for everything, and the camera will turn on when you load the app. What do we need to do? We click on Build, and straight away, at least as the way I do it, is I create a folder here called APK. I go into APK, and here I name the APK file, which is the compiled file. I click, and if Java is well installed on your laptop, if Unity has a proper setup, and if the stars are aligned and our fingers crossed, you should get this APK file, the compiled file. If this is the first time that you compile with Android, probably you will be asked the JDK route. I don't know if you had tried this before or not. Yes? It is asking for a route. So the route that you have to tell it, if you've got the JDK installed, is probably C, program files, Java, or something along these lines.
Pero te l'has d'instal·lar. Directament te'l pilla?
Sí, tu
Ah, mira.
Unity, dius on està l'adreça i ja està.
I ja està. Ah, bé, això no sabia.
Una pregunta.
Digues.
En vez de exportarlo como una APK, ¿se podría exportar como una librería o algo para añadirlo a otro proyecto? Pregunto. Más que nada porque tú imagínate, tú creas ahí el...
Podrías exportarlo, mira. Cuando lo exportas...
Export it. You can do it as a Google Android project. So it does not encrypt the code, and you get this project that can be opened by Eclipse, and you can include all the native code, you can select objects, etc.
La aplicación que nos enseñaste antes, la de Aure.cat, que tiene diferentes opciones, pero algunas de ellas que son nativas del código. No tienen nada
Exactamente. Sí. ¿Vale? Entonces... Sí. Sí. No. Lo que puedes llegar a hacer es...
Do is, this is going into the details, but there are Unity communication systems between, for instance, native and Java through messages. I mean, messaging systems. Or also through events. And then you imagine you need to give a specific, or you need to make a specific, with the specification given by Unity, you will need to define the headlines, folder so-and-so. Then you end up creating a sort of a DLL in order to send messages and create that communication, and you will be able to send strings on objects, roots. The folder will be rich with content, so the whole communication part, you can do this in native, and I can do this in Unity because the engine provides it to me. But this mix between native code and this is, well, this is a bit complex.
Los packages de Euphoria, estos que nos has dicho de importar al principio, ¿hay que importarlos siempre para cada uno de los proyectos? ¿O cómo importarlos?
Sí. Pues cuando empieza un proyecto nuevo,
Tienes que
hacer todo el importaje. Sí.
el plugin y todo lo que...
Import everything for a new project. What you can do too, if you always do the same, is you can create a template project where you would have the Vuforia there, where you would have the default structure, the structure by default created there, and then to save projects there. Let's import, because otherwise we'll run out of time and I would like to explain something else. Okay.
Vale, exportamos.
Okay, we export. In principle, we connect the phone.
El teléfono.
The phone should have. The phone should have the USB depuration on in order to transfer the files. I have a file, a folder here. I would copy and paste the file here. And with an Android file explorer, I have root file manager or S Explorer or something like this, one of these free ones. We would, this is the debugging phase.
Vale. Estamos aquí.
So we are here. We have debugged the USB. We go to the browser, for instance this one, in a folder where we have included it. We would click the file, and then I would say, I have installed this several times to test it, but then it would say, you need to now add this app, and you need these permits as with any other Android app. Then we would click install.
Esto, ¿no? Vale. Y le daríamos al abrir.
And then we would click open.
Entonces, fijaros que como no habíamos puesto una splash screen,
as we didn't have a default splash screen, we will have Unity's splash screen. It's by default. It's not, it doesn't say development build. I don't know if you can see it there. And what can we do now? We now take the card.
A ver si lo puedo hacer bien.
Let me see if I can do this well. Okay, can you see now? In this case we see a different thing because it was a different project, but now you would have to see the cube in here. Yes, is it working? Is it working with you? As we don't have that much time left, let me show you a couple of examples. One is to change texture and to do it directly with your touch, with a touch or with a pen. I'll be a little bit fast. Let's create a new scene. And the scene will be saved in Workshop, Scenes, and Mesh Marker. Mesh Marker. Sorry, I forgot to explain one thing.
Poner un image target, ¿vale?
Place an image target. We click image target. Look. This is like frame marker, but nothing appears in here. Now we will define the image of the hat we used to have. You have a place where you can click, press here for target creation. We click, and this will send us to Vuforia. Here we introduce the email address that you introduced when you registered, and your password. You marked, what did you mark? Image marker. Sorry, no, image target. In prefabs, yes, that's right. When I clicked image target, in properties, you have a button where you can click that says press here for target creation, and then it will immediately open up the browser and it will send you to Vuforia web site. Then you need to register with your email address, the one used for registering, and your password. And here you have the administrator. And what do you need to do here? Easy. Create database that we will call Workshop. Create, you enter Workshop by clicking on it, and then you say add target, which means adding an object that will be recognized. We put the name of the image, in this case hat, and now it will ask us whether this is going to be a flat image, a cube, a box, a cuboid, or if it's a cylinder. We will say that this is going to be a flat image. It asks for the width. I always write down 1000, and then I adjust it in Unity. And then it asks us to select the image. If you go to the file you have unzipped earlier, you will find an image called marker. Upload it.
Llavors,
It's uploaded. And now it will create automatically that marker. Now this will go to a queue, and when the system can identify the specific features of the image, it will upload it. If we do F5 or if we refresh the page, we will see that we already have the hat there. The number of stars we have down there, can you see the number of stars? Is the quality of the image for it to be recognized. If it has less stars, it means that it's worse. This is another added value of this type of systems, because as it's easier to recognize and less features it has, it will be more powerful for the AR system, because in the end what you're doing is making the software more robust. What do we do now then? We now click the image. Sorry. Back. We click the checkbox. And we click download selected target. And when it says whether we want to download it through native environment, Eclipse, Xcode, and so on, or through Unity Editor. We will say Unity Editor. We create that. And we save the file. If we go to download, wherever you have the downloaded file, here we would have the package as well. I said that in the end, packages are files with, or folders with files inside, and we will see the structure it creates. We take this file, Unity package, and we drag it directly to Unity. How do you download it? By clicking a button called download it. You mark it with a checkbox. You mark the checkbox, and then it will download. And we drag it here. Here we will see how many files and what files are inside this package, and it brings a small referenced image, a tiny one, so that we can visually have the marker that the system will recognize. It also contains an XML file with the features. It measures so much by so much, and then a .dat document which includes the encrypted features, so that the software will recognize this image. And if we open this, you will see that these are all codes. We click import, and now we have added a project, but we don't know, we don't see it here. But if we go to streaming assets, here we'll find a folder called WCARD or VCARD, and these are the two files that it has included. One is the XML with the measures and the features, and the other one is this other file which contains the real data. So we have now already included the marker in the project. Now we need to tell Unity that this marker is the one that we want to use to have it recognized. Okay, earlier on we included an image target. If we click image target, we now don't have the create marker button. It has changed, and it now says which data set would you like to choose. So we we open this up, and as there's only one image in this data set, and it will choose the image of the hat. That will be the data set. We zoom out, and we will find the image there. Can you see? We could now add here the cube. We create a cube. Just as we did before. We link it as parent-child, And we would have the same structure as we had before with the frame marker, but in this case with an image target. If we do play now, if we click play, and if we put the marker in front, yes, we still need the camera. That's right. You are so right. Let's add the camera. AR camera here. And now we also add a light. So we now have the same structure. It's a directional light that we need to add. And if I do play, if I press play and it is blue, why is that so? Well, it's blue because we have two cameras on the scene. I have not eliminated the Unity camera, and it's using the default camera, which is the Unity one. It's the one that comes by default whenever we create a new project, so we will have to delete it, and now we can click play again, and that's where I appear. If I show the image and it doesn't do anything, why? Because Vuforia knows that it has those markers with those 500 combinations of a frame marker. In this case, it's different. Now we need to tell the camera that the camera needs to upload that dataset. We need to combine camera plus dataset. So we go to camera, we scroll down, and one of the scripts reads dataset load behavior. Load dataset. I click and I click activate. And here we would have all the datasets we would have added. If we had 3 datasets with 3 different markets, we would have, well, that many. This can be touched through code so that you can activate this or unactivate that. If we now press play, we now have one image, which could be alien to this, the event image, for instance. Now we see that it's being tracked on real time, and it's on top of a content. Okay? So first of all, image target. Create the marker on the website. Download the package. Import the package. And you tell the camera to load up that dataset. Otherwise it will not work. We're now going to do something really quick. We're going to do the touch exercise. Let's go to workshop. That's where we store our contents. Here in camera, almost at the bottom, dataset load behavior, you need to click load dataset workshop and activate. Okay, let's go to workshop. Here we create a folder called 3D. We go into 3D. Here we will import content, which will be a switch, a 3D switch. If we go to the folder that I gave you at the start, you should have a folder called Interruptor, and you will have an FBX folder. You drag the FBX folder to the 3D folder, and it will import the switch. If you click on top of the switch, at the bottom, here, we would have a small visualization of the object. And now we have imported a 3D to Unity, and now we need to import it to the scene. How do we do that? Well, as we always do, you click on top and you drag. It's very tiny. You zoom with the scaling, we click on the white one and we make it bigger. And then we move it more or less on top of the marker. We delete the cube because we don't need it anymore. We need to make this bigger. And we give it this values 0, 0, 0. We place it there. Image target all 0, 0, 0. Switch. Well, that's the interruptor folder, which contains the what in Spanish is called interruptores, interruptor, which are the switches. And I said that this is the most complex part. Placing this here is kind of complex. We have this. What do we need to do now? We place the object who's the child of the image target, so that when the marker appears, then, well, it's basically the same structure as always. The only thing we're doing is we're refining the exercise. What we now would like to do is we would like you to have different materials. So first of all, we are going to add materials. For that, we click Assets. We create a folder called Resources. In the Resources folder, we create another folder called Textures. The Resources and the Textures folders are a structure we give Unity, and here is where we will add the images with the different finishes. So we click Textures, and we take the other three images, blue, red, white, and the flowers. We drag them to this folder. We now have the finishes, the colors. Look, now the object has got two parts. It has the switch itself and the frame of the switch, okay? So the frame has got a texture which is flowers, and this is the part I would like to change. So I've prepared a script that we will mention in a second, but which is called Change Texture Color. We put it in the workshop folder. We had previously created a folder called Script, so we drag it in there. And we need to assign this script to the frame of the switch. And for that, you drag it and you just leave it there. And when we click on top of the frame, we would have the same structure, mesh structure, but we also have a script called Change Texture Color. So as you see, it's always drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop. Not complex at all. So if we now say execute or run with keys A and S, we simulate a touch. You press S and it changes texture. You change A and the texture will go back. So back and forth, S and A. If you look at the script, you will see that it's easy to understand. In order to edit a script directly, we double-click the script and we will see the appearance of the mono, which is the editor Unity has built in. This is Unity's built-in editor. I will not tell you about the structure Unity uses to create scripts, but in any case, it has several parts. One is start, when you load a scene and the content that needs to be included there, and the other part is update. In each frame, what is the image that needs to be shown? So at start we would load the textures that we added in resources and textures on those folders. We would do it like that with this code. We would put this on an array and so on. Here we check if textures have been uploaded. It's worthwhile checking this up because it's not the same thing to do it on a laptop or on a smartphone. It will take much longer on a smartphone than on a laptop, which is so fast. That's why it's interesting to double check it. Or sometimes you will see that you need to verify things because sometimes some things work on a laptop or on a computer and others don't, and they don't work on a smartphone. And then we have a function called change texture. What does it do? It calls the update, and for each frame it calls changing texture. So for each touch in the touches that you can identify, it checks if I slide to the right, if I pan right, if the touch identifies the position in the handset or in the device, it verifies that it has finished. I assign to each object the texture I want to assign it. So the visual feeling I have is that when I click or when I pan, texture changes. So I'm assigning the texture every time within an array, a vector, we could say. And the same thing, but to the left, it's the same role, the same function, sorry, but just reversed, so it counts backwards instead of forwards. This type of control, touch, delta position, and phase, and so on, is something that you can only test when you compile it and you install the project on your phone, on your smartphone, because you don't have touch there on the computer, do you? So what you usually do is you create a small bit of code, which is basically the same. The logic for assigning textures up and down would be the same. It's this bit here. But then you add keys. So you say, if you press A, it will increase, it will shift texture up. If you press S, it will shift textures down. So we don't have to compile the project, we have to install it on the phone and then test it. We can do this already on your laptop or on your computer where you are developing this. You can test it from the computer. The fact is that later, if you've done the touch better or worse, it's something that you will have to test on your device, of course, but this will help you check whether you have made a mistake in loading the vector, or if you have only, for instance, added 3 of the 4 existing textures and so on. It's just a rain check.
I, bueno, us fico, perquè abans ella...
He mentioned animations. If you import Imperial Soldier FBX to the 3D folder, if we add it to the scene. How? By dragging it directly onto the scene. 0, 0, 0 here. We scale it up. This is an animated imperial soldier. By default, the animation will not kick in. So you click the model, you click rig, and you click legacy, apply. Sorry, rig, legacy, apply. Where do you find rig? If you click 3D model on top of it, you will see 3 tabs: model, rig, and animation. If you say legacy and then you say apply, it will immediately include the animation that the model has got built in. So let's remember to put the model within the image target, and if I push play and everything works according to plan, then we would have the little soldier there. This is Skywalker dancing. How do you do that final step?
Perquè faci l'animació, cliqueu sobre...
For the animation to turn on, you click on Imperial Soldier, not the object that you dragged, the 3D that you imported. And here you've got the 3 tabs: model, rig, and animation. You click on rig and you click on legacy. And you click on apply. If you do not click on apply, it will never work. You have to drag it to the scene. From here, you drag it and drop it on the scene.
Vale? Sí, sí, li pots dir-li... on era això? A no sé quina pestanya és, li pots dir-li el...
Some tab where you can specify the type of animation. For example, if you want it to be table tennis type, that is, once it reaches the end, that it goes back to the beginning. Here, I find it. If you go to Imperial Soldier, Animations, Bram mode, that is clicked by default. Once means once. If you include the loop, when it reaches the end, it will go back to the beginning. And if you include the table tennis mode, it will be exactly the opposite. But you have to apply. Always remember to click on apply. So if you change it here, I click on loop, but if I do not press apply, it will never go on. It takes a little time because the structure is quite big and you are applying it to the whole hierarchy of the model. So now if we try it, now it's going forward, and now it restarts, so the loop is working. And that's about it. Time is up, isn't it? Should you have any question, doubt, I'll be around for some time, and I think that Pau wants to mention something.
Vale, ara ho mirem, no problema. Digues, pues ja està. No sé.
Pau, that's it. Thank you.
Bueno, ara us volia robar 2 minuts més.
I just want to keep you here a couple of minutes more. Thank you, Albert, for this interesting seminar. I just want to say that I2CAT is participating in a specific project to develop technological enablers, and some of them focus on AR and mobile apps. So one of the things we're doing here in Barcelona within this project is to test them both with professionals and real users. So we thought today was the perfect occasion to show you a short demo here outside in the corridor. We want to tell you about these enablers that are still being developed, and let's see what your opinion is. So if you don't mind, I would require your attendance. Let's leave the room and meet us outside.
A ver qué pasa amb la càmera.
Va tot bé, vale? El problema és que la càmera no s'encén.